they're having right now. So let's continue the conversation without Waleed, and then he can jump right in as soon as he comes back. So, Scott, I was going to ask Waleed, well, you know the question I was going to ask, and it had to do with the misinterpretation, not just by this government, the misunderstanding by this and previous governments of the mindset of the Islamic fundamentalists who are running Iran. And I was going to ask him, at least his opinion, about where he thought we can actually even go vis-a-vis negotiations, because I think, at least from my perspective, there's a trust issue.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Gary? I don't know if this is on topic. You can flag me if I'm committing the cardinal sin. But when I think about that, about misunderstanding the mindset, right? And I used to talk ad nauseum about the liberal society stuff. What's funny about that is, if you look at Trump's speech, which I'm sure he didn't write, no president writes their speeches, but I mean, he signs off on it and stuff. In Saudi Arabia, right? That was a speech that recognized this was not a sort of George Bush, Barack Obama, everybody loves freedom, the world wants liberal values sort of mindset. It was, hey, you do things differently. We're not going to come here and tell you how to run your culture, your society. You're prosperous and you've done it without Western do-gooder values. I'm editorializing a little bit, but, and if you look at his security document that came out, we talked about it last year, that was also very multicultural in its awareness, and it was kind of a Huntington Clash of Civilization sort of framework where, again, it seemed to recognize that there were significant differences in the world and illiberal differences and cultural differences, and that was going to be taken seriously, that Western civilization, it talks about Western civilization in that document, and again, in kind of a Huntington way, which is, as I get older, there was a time in my life when I hated that book. And now as I get older, I find it more and more compelling. But, yeah, I mean, I thought what your friend Waleed was saying, too, was great about buying time, right? You got these people that don't buckle the way we would buckle. As we were talking about yesterday, just don't buckle the way liberal democracy would buckle, right? When you have to take poll numbers and stuff about a war, it's not the kind of operation they're running. And so, yeah, I think that it is interesting to misunderstand the mindset. And again, we're giving them time, which I think is an interesting thing that Waleed said, that's, the time is on their side. It's not ours from Waleed's perspective. I found that really interesting. Okay, I don't know what else I have.
Well, I want to jump on something that he said about his perspective, and I'm certain as a former Foreign Affairs advisor to the president, he has the contacts, some of the same contacts that he had while he was in office. These guys and gals tend to keep back channels going after they leave officialdom. And of course, he has his contacts in the Middle East, long-standing contacts in the Middle East. And he suggested, I think the direction he was going in was that there may be attempts for a support of a popular uprising in Iran, and we hear Alan and other expat Iranians raise this issue often. But I, for one, sometimes think, Alan, Amir, maybe he could speak for himself in a moment here. Is this just wishful thinking on your part? Or is this something that actually can occur? Remember, you're starting from a baseline of 0 weapon. I cannot imagine, with the number of weapons that are available to the populace here in the United States. I mean, I'm from Michigan, and I know when it's hunting season, there are more armed individuals in the woods of Michigan and forests of Michigan than some countries have standing armies, you know? So there are a lot of people with weapons. I don't think it's possible, and I would say, thank goodness, for a popular uprising in the United States. I don't think it's possible. You can have skirmishes, you can have whatever one wants to interpret that happened on the Capitol or in the Capitol on November the 6th. You can look at all that and say, look what's happening. But in reality, an actual popular uprising, I think we would all agree, is pretty much, let's just say, improbable here in the United States. Now, you're starting from a big planet zero in Iran. Although he suggested that there are weapons that have been secreted into the country and put in the hands of the young Iranians who are fed up with this regime. But, God, I gotta wonder, is that even possible?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, in the United States, like, despite all the guns we have, right? I mean, you'd have to have tanks and surface-to-air missiles, and I mean, look at just the sheer firepower. You're right. I mean, starting from where they're at. And this is what my Second Amendment advocate friends always remind me, right? Like, you can't get stuff's to stage a rebellion without guns. I think that's, and also the fear you have. I think not just guns, but the fear that not only does the regime have such asymmetrical force, such radical asymmetric force, but they're not knowing in your consciousness that they're not afraid to use it.
Sorry.
Right? That they'll kill tens of thousands of their own people in a weekend. By the way, I missed those protests, as you noted yesterday, Gary. I guess I just dialed out on social media. I missed the protests on campus. I'm sure they happened up at NYU. I just didn't see them.
Right. Very, very well said. Waleed, I'm glad you're back. I hope your technical issues have been resolved.
I am so sorry. I am. It's a technical issue. It's a new.
I knew it. Look, you're brand new to Clubhouse. Some of us who have been here a long time sometimes have technical issues. So no apologies.
All the time that I promised. All the time that I promised, I'm with you, gentlemen, ladies and
gentlemen. Yeah, I know you are, and also believe me, all the people who are listening are absolutely understanding, because at one time or another, we've all suffered similar issues, so don't worry about it. I want to get back to the point that you were making, and that is that I was asking Scott that, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. They're starting from basically a baseline of zero. There's no Second Amendment there. How do you actually have optimism that there could be some kind of a popular uprising in the...
Well, input number one is I'm deeply connected to the various elements, not just one major element, various elements. Should it be the older ethnic, territorial, regional uprisings? Of course, everybody mentions the Kurds, but I also have been interacting with the Arabs in the Ahwaz or Khuzestan, with Baluchistan, and that for the last 10 years. It's not only yesterday or the day before. And it seems to me that those components have already prepared themselves for a form of a guerrilla, but they have expected. See, at the end of February, they have expected, when the president made those posts asking all Iranians, including the Persian majority, which is the most important, that they need to continue to march. They need to identify their oppressors, which means, in diplomatic language, there will be trials, there will be courts for mass killings and war crimes, so on and so forth. And obviously, the term, help is on the way. All of this was basically convincing the Iranians, millions of them, to take to the streets. They did. 52 or 53,000 people were killed. That's, in sociology, that's the ultimate indicator that the population will rise. There is no way they're gonna coexist with the regime. The problem is that the regime has immediately went to Qatar and to others and told them, let's offer something so huge to the administration And the administration, obviously, when they decided to negotiate, the president said, okay, we're going to give them a chance, thinking that it will be resolved in a few weeks. What did the regime do? They went back to the population and crushed the cadre. They have been executing almost 2 or 3 a day or 4 a day since then. So they did a big maneuver, which is to calm down the clash with the United States, obtain that negotiation, which took too long, many months, made some mistakes, because I think their lobby in the United States is telling them, look, everybody wants the deal, Democrats and some Republicans wants the deal, so therefore don't just get the minimum, try to get the maximum. And that explains why the brokers, our brokers, will come back to the administration and say, well, they are determined. They want to do business with us for $300 billion. That's dizzying. And it took that long to realize that the regime is not in the business. The regime was in the business of pushing us to July. And now, of course, they're working on August to get us weak. Us meaning the supporters of the president weak before losing the election as they thought. That was their plan. Now, it's critical between now and I would say mid-September, what the decision in the Oval Office is going to be. And the president said that we're going to crush their ability, strategic ability to recover. That's what they're trying to do now. And we know a few months ago, the administration was saying we destroy the Air Force, Navy. I made that statement earlier on in the winter that they lost the strategic weaponry. What they have are about 475,000 militiamen, the IRGC and the Basij, and some of the Mukhabarat, meaning the intelligence services. That is a continental problem, meaning, yes, we took out all these weaponry systems, and yes, they said, okay, now land here and fight us. So this is how they convince themselves and us that the American public is not ready for a fight on land. And on the other hand, they are disarming or they are deterring the civilians. It's going to take the president to decide that he's going to send our forces to destroy the remnant of the strategic ability. And meanwhile, as I said, the missing link, which I think is going to happen, but I'm not sure when, what day, what week, we're going to engage with the Iranian opposition and people and have them take to the streets.
Why? And the first question is, why did he? And the second question is, should he have? Why did he take the foot off the gas after giving so much hope to the Iranian?
You know, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I can't even answer the question because I'm not inside the wall, but I have my connections with the administration. I served as an advisor early on, so it doesn't count much now. But from analysis, from simple analysis, as I have analyzed the Obama-Iran deal, because we have now the information, we don't have the information about the negotiations now. I do trust the president that when he feels that he has been betrayed by the negotiators, with the Iranian or the regime negotiators, he's going to explode, and he is exploding. So whatever the regime now think they have to do to take back the confidence, the confiance of the president, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. But at the time, I mean, follow me, and that's something very logical. Those who put pressure on the administration are of two kinds. Those companies and the insurance companies for the boats who were trapped in the Gulf during the last clash, they put humongous pressure on the administration, and the president is close to these milieu. He knows them well. They put pressure, saying that we're going to have a serious crash in economy, and that would translate into a problem, economic problem here, not at 3-4 months from the election. That's number one. But number two, probably more important, is the fact that the same companies, the same financial interests who got engaged in the Obama deal have approached the regime. This is between information and assessment. I would say more assessment than information, but it has merit. Approached the regime and told them, look, we are ready. Because companies have no policies. They don't care if it's Democrat or Republican. And the numbers that we see, we can convince the administration and those close to the administration to present is close to $300 billion. That's twice the size of the $150 billion of the 2015 deal. Now, when you have that force, it's a lobby by itself. It's a lobby by itself, meaning it would present the case that the regime is going to moderate that we killed, 2/3 of 2 generations of leaders. We have, or the analysts who made that conclusion said, we killed many of their leaders. They are afraid. They are on the run. And that's what mainstream academia and media have been trying to convince us. If you tell them this is a good deal, you'll survive, we'll make money together, then they may come. They came. And when they came, they barely signed the MOU. And the MOU did not do much details, but they revealed to us what was behind the MOU. It was $24 billion go straight to the regime. We assume with $24 billion, they're going to immediately calm down and not go to war because they'll lose that cash. But the most important one was the $300 billion. So with the imagination, what we can do with the $300 billion, well, we will have time to see how we can convince the regime to accommodate the population. I mean, that's where the theoreticians of that option have thought and were told by the academia. But the regime itself has a pressure group on the inside. The IRGC radicals, the Basij radicals, they fell, meaning those negotiators on the Iranian side or on the Republic side felt the radicalization that took place over the past 46 years. So there is a chunk inside Iran, and that chunk is in the IRGC mostly, that told their negotiators, yes, we will do a deal, but we don't want to appear as we have lost. So the narrative started in Iran by the regime. We're going to sign a deal with the Americans. The Americans have lost. That's why they are offering a deal. And we found out, actually, our intelligence first services, and then the president. The president is very pragmatic. They don't give a deal, we're going to give them hell. And that's what's happening now. But having said that, if we strike the remnants of their forces, and I'll repeat maybe for the fourth time, the only segment between us and victory is to mobilize the Iranian opposition. And to conclude very quickly here, we may also count on weapons that have been sent by the Artesh, which is the classical army of Iran, smaller in size, but they're still inside the country, and they would close in. That would be the equivalent of the French resistance and the Allies meeting mid-distance.
Well, it's interesting, that last comment, while you mentioned the French resistance and the Allies, the president actually did not put together what one of his predecessors called a coalition of the willing. Was this something unattainable, or was this something that he miscalculated, thinking that we could do it alone with the help of Israel? What's the story about that? Because I've always felt, and I may be wrong in my assessment, that if he had been able to put together a coalition of the willing, this might have had a different outcome by now.
That's the greatest question. Here's a timid answer to that, because we still don't know much about the details of what happened, but one can imagine, one can project it. We know how these things function. We know the lobbying. We just spoke about it. The coalition of the willing this time was more than enough. The sheer power of the United States is huge. And the sheer power of Israel. Israel is a small United States, but on the East Mediterranean coast, and both together, our two aviations and navies and missile force have, without putting troops on the ground, been able to destroy what I call the strategic ability of that regime. We were very close. In my own numbering or quantitative analysis, I would say we were at 75 to 80% of the win, to a certain point where some officers of the IRGC have been trying to negotiate through third parties, including Oman, including at the time Qatar, to see how they can, they message actually the administration saying, okay, if we break away from the regime, if we bring down that regime, they were lying obviously, but they were concerned at the same time. What would we have once that regime will go and we come? And you remember, some of